Well, hello, Ellen.
Well, hello, Trevor.
This is another amazing day here at Stonebrook. It's another amazing day here on Yard to Table.
Very excited. It's a very sweet day on Yard to Table.
Sweet day.
Yes.
I think that's called foreshadowing.
I like to give
that's the official term for foreshadowing.
I like to give little hints.
You do. You're a hinter. You're a hint giver. You're in the hinterlands.
That get maybe the readers buzzing.
The readers?
No, wait. I like to give little hints that give the listeners.
There you go. Listeners, because they're listeners.
Get them.
If they're reading the podcast, then that'll be unique. I like that.
Do it again.
No, I like it. This is perfect. I'm not allowing you to get out of that at all. There's no doing it again because that was awesome.
I like to get the listeners buzzing. There you go.
Oh, buzzing. You like to get the listeners buzzing. There's another one.
Another little hint. Well, I will say overall, it has been a really fun journey. This is our 6th, 7th episode?
9th, 10th. We're not sure.
I'm not sure. Well, Trevor, who do we have today as a guest?
On the sweet buzzing podcast
That's
of
right.
Yard to Table
That's
through
right.
all of your hints. Well, today, our guest is an author.
Yes.
A neighbor here in Weston, actually.
This community is just incredible.
And a beekeeper. She is the founder of the AHTS, which, of course, is the American Honey Tasting Society. And she's a member and an instructor for the Italian National Register of Experts in the Sensory Analysis of Honey.
I am so into this. Keep going.
I normally don't pause in an intro, but at the same time, that is a very impressive society to be a part of.
I can't wait to learn more.
I'm very excited. And she received there at that National Register of Honey Experts in the Sensory Analysis of Honey in Italia, formal training as a honey sensory expert. Now, if that wasn't enough, because that's already fantastic, she's the founder of Red Bee Honey. Oh. She's been on numerous TV shows, everything from On the Road with Edible Nutmeg, Weekends at Yankee, Vice TV, Dr. Oz, even ABC's The Chew. We are thrilled to have here at the table with us the one and only Marina Marchese.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
We are enormously excited to have you here.
I'm thrilled. There's so much in the intro that I want to talk about. But I'm buzzing. I said it again.
Neighbor in Weston, is that what you wanted to talk about?
I did. Well, that was the first thing I wanted to say, because we always like to connect how we heard about our guests. And we first heard about Red Bee Honey, and it was because we got a lovely honey sampling kit from my father-in-law. And it came with this beautiful wheel and a tasting wheel. And I had never seen anything like that before. The honey was delicious. And
we got a book.
And
the book was your book. And it was phenomenal.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're very
so
welcome.
Glad you enjoyed it.
It was great. And of course, then we found out you were from Weston, and that just validated our move, because we're so many amazing creative people here. But I'm afraid, Marina, I'm embarrassed to admit to you that growing up, I was not a fan of honey.
You're going in there already?
Well, I figure I just want to be like up front.
Put all the cards on the table right out of the gate.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes. I will say that my experience with honey was mostly the plastic jar that had the bear-shaped honey container. I was not a big fan. And then I tried local honey, and that was a completely different experience. And I understand that your first taste of honey was kind of life-changing, much more than mine. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's life-changing. And yes, we all did grow up with the little plastic honey bear.
Right?
And
I can see him in my head.
Exactly. And it was in the back end of the cupboard.
Right.
And then it was crystallized and hard and chunky. Couldn't get it out. So you threw it away and started with the white sugar, right? The powdered sugar or whatever. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, I came from the arts, and I lived in the city for a long time. I went to the School of Visual Arts, and I had a pretty good career as an illustrator. Things changed, and I came back to Connecticut, and I connected with the art community here. And through the art community, I met a neighbor who was a beekeeper. And this was back in 2000, so you didn't meet too many beekeepers back then. It was, I like to remind people it was before we were talking about organic, we were talking about farmers markets. So to meet a beekeeper was a little bit offbeat, and they invited me over to visit their bees. And this happened in Weston. So I went over on a beautiful Saturday afternoon and showed up, and I was given the bee hat, the veil. And
how'd you feel about that?
Well, Howland Blackiston is one of my co-authors, who was the person that my neighbor. And he said to me, well, honeybees are very curious creatures. They like to crawl into the nooks and crannies of our clothing, and these are going to stop the bees from stinging our faces. And
Good plan.
I thought, what?
Thank you.
Okay,
We
that's
appreciate
important.
that.
Yeah. So, I was really excited, but yet it was a little bit trepid,
Yeah.
So he smoked the hive, he opened up the bees. And the first thing that struck me was the bees were just ignoring us, like thousands of bees just crawling on the top of the hive. And I said to him, so why are they not attacking? Because bees attack, right? You're supposed to run and swat and everything.
We've been taught that they swarm
I've seen that episode of
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh where
Yeah.
he goes and
as a favorite.
Yeah. So he said
Don't get me
to
singing
me,
I'm a Little Black Rain Cloud.
she will too. It is a favorite.
So he said to me, honeybees are not native to the U.S. and my bees are Italian bees. And I said, Italian bees? Pedigree bees? And he said, well, most of the bee species here in the U.S. are Italian bred, but there's many different kinds of species. And that visit ended up with me getting to taste the fresh honey out of the hive. And it was like nothing I had tasted. Like my taste buds exploded. It was sublime, full of flavor, like not the little plastic bear from the store. So I ended up getting one hive. I figured, well,
So you had that taste and you're like, I need a hive.
I need to have honey every day. Like I need to have my own honey. But meanwhile, there's a little bit of work that's involved and a learning. And I was all in for it. And I figured, it'll be a little hobby I'll do on the weekend. Well, you talk to any beekeeper and it takes over your life, right? So you start, one hive becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 10. And then you're buying all equipment. The next thing you know, you're at the bee club, you're on the board, you're going to conferences, you're trading honey with people. And you're like, I got to start making some money. I got to start recouping some of this money. So Red Bee Honey was born as a way to sell my honey and to sort of make this business sustainable. So that's really the beginning.
So it really changed your life. You went from a taste to a businesswoman.
Yeah, to a honey entrepreneur.
Yeah,
I guess,
love
right?
that. I love that.
And I know that you were on the Chew, and Clinton Kelly said about you when you appeared on the show that you turned your backyard beekeeping into a buzzing business, which is
We're going to say buzzing a lot, aren't
a
we?
good
Yeah.
alliteration. But alliterations aside, we've started a lot of businesses and we're creative producers. And so I love the sort of genesis of how did you get Red Bee up on its feet? Because it's a big leap to go from just a single hobby business all the way to full production
And a brand.
and a brand. Tell us, just give me a little of how that all cooked.
So, yeah, that's a great question. So I discovered something about myself, having a creative background, being an artist and a designer. I was also doing product development. A lot of my art and design was on product. So I had a good understanding. I worked in China for a few years with various companies in manufacturing. So I had this background. And the real aha moment for me was when it came time to design the logo and the branding.
Yeah.
I didn't know I can do that. So, and the logo and the design has evolved over time, changed a little bit, but that's when the art and the bees met. And it was really, truly, an experience that they came together for me. And I was always wondering how I'm going to just leave my art career behind. But no, they met in that way. So I was able to create the brand over time and learn, how to, design and develop everything, the products.
I love that. Art and the brand and the bees met. I love that.
Our daughter painted a picture of a bee
She did.
about 5 months ago.
Yeah.
They work well together. I can tell you that.
They do.
Was it a red bee?
It was not.
It's a beautiful honeybee, but it was not a red bee. So that means that you have a pretty decent scale in your apiary here, right? Like in town.
And Trevor, for our listeners, what is an apiary?
That's where the bees live. That's a somebody who has a lot of bees.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a group of beehives. Those wooden boxes that kind of look like file cabinets, those are beehives. So a group of beehives is an apiary.
How many do you have?
So right now I have 6, which
Okay.
is a lot for me. We at one point had about 15. That was insane. But, now 4 books later and teaching and traveling, I don't really have the time to manage so many bees, but I have to have bees and I have to have that grounding
Yes.
experience and
A connection, I would
yeah.
imagine,
Totally.
right? That's what inspired you. That's the continuous inspiration. We
Yeah.
get that a lot.
If our listeners out there who love local things, they also love experiencing things in their own backyard. If they wanted to become a beekeeper,
I don't know. Say like Trevor.
maybe somebody on the other side of the microphone here who's sitting in this chair, not naming any names, also wanted to get bees, what would
Is
that...
this going to become the chicken conversation?
You know what? Let's just let me ask the questions
The
that are
floor is
important
yours,
because everybody
Mr.
needs
Crafts.
to know. What does it take to become a beekeeper? If they're inspired to get bees and somebody wants to start the process.
And to do it correctly.
yeah, that's what I always say. To do
Right.
it right takes
To do it
time.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, I had a mentor. So I was introduced to bees and I had somebody to call on those days that I opened up the hive and did an inspection and thought, oh my God, my bees are all dying. What's going on? Because it takes time to learn the behavior and what's going on and what to look for. And I highly recommend joining a bee club. And there's bee clubs in every city, every state, every country. There's groups of people that join together for educational purposes. And we happen to have one that meets right here in Weston, the Backyard
course.
Beekeeper.
There we
I
go.
love it.
I'm ready. Sign me up, coach. I am ready.
Well, that makes
Thursday night, Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
We have a meeting.
All right. So that makes sense. So getting a good mentor, really understanding what you need to get into it, because, I know this isn't a true crime podcast, but I've heard something called counterfeit honey. I know I'm getting down the...
You do like a true crime podcast,
I do love
by
it.
the way.
So what is counterfeit honey? Is that a thing?
Counterfeit honey is honey that's been adulterated.
Okay.
Oof.
And
Doesn't sound good.
So it sounds like a crime.
Yeah, it's a crime. It's a crime.
It's a crime against honey and nature.
So there's a couple different ways that honey can be counterfeited. But what's really fascinating is honey is the 3rd most food suspect to adulteration after milk and olive oil. Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. There's a lot of honey fraud out there. So there's a couple different
Honey
things that can
fraud.
happen. Basically, when you have honey, it's a raw product. It's produced by bees. But if things are added, because a bee only makes a 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in their entire life, honey is rare and precious.
Wow.
And all the beekeepers here in the US, we do not make enough honey to meet the demand. And everybody wants local honey. It's not enough honey for everybody to have local honey. It's very, very scarce.
Wow.
So for this reason, we have a lot of imported honey into the US. And if you read the labels, you'll see that it's not only just imported from a country, it's blended from like 3 different countries. Like why?
Oh, interesting.
So
Like you'll see, like you said about olive oil, you'll have a
Exactly.
blend of Argentinian and Italian and California and all these things come together.
Exactly. So there's a couple different things, mislabeling the country of origin, saying it's local, US made when it's not, adding other sugars to, expand your offerings. So adding, different kinds of syrups, high fructose corn syrup, all of those things. Believe it or not, you can do that if you declare it on the label. So if you want to say honey and sugar, that's okay. But when they don't declare that on the label, that's fraud. That's,
Wow.
Food fraud.
Wow. And so that's really because they're trying to extend this very precious resource because it's not meeting demand.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens with things like Manuka honey, which everybody wants.
Oh, yeah.
Manuka. Or there's other honeys that we produce here in the U.S. that are really like national treasures, like sourwood honey, Tupelo honey, black locust, acacia honey. These are really special honeys, but, bees only make a certain amount of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of other things that go on in the industry, big companies buying up this really good honey and then blending it with like cheap imported honey. So
maybe this is a true crime podcast.
It
It's
is
turning into one right now. Between what they spray on organic food and this,
I know.
It's tough stuff.
Well, and I think the flavors of it all is the part that is so interesting when we got your kit. And I know Trevor wanted to talk about that a little bit, but do they also, in counterfeit honey, is flavor added as well? And I want to talk about how we know the difference between that and get into your amazing palate and tasting.
So if they add a flavor to it, again, they have to declare it on the label. But more than anything else, I think what they're doing is just buying up a lot of cheap honey and blending it to have a certain flavor profile. But for me and anybody who tastes it side by side with like a good quality honey, it's so flat. Like
It's the plastic bear.
Yeah, it's flat. The flavor, it has no flavor. It's just sweet. So the thing with real, local, U.S., good quality honey is that there's flavor. There's a complexity to flavor. And you don't get that with commercial honey.
And I think that's one of the things that was so fascinating about this little sampler box that my dad got was that you have this tasting wheel, which I've never seen before. I didn't even know that existed as a concept, that, wine, and you have the ability to taste different kinds of wines and olive oil, sometimes even, but to have honey and to have it represented so clearly as a consumer and have it truly be local, I was absolutely just totally blown away, because how do all these different flavors occur? Because you see on the labels, it's wildflower honey or blueberry honey or orange honey, and you sort of get some of that, but tell us a little more about how those flavors come to be.
So that was what really fascinated me about honey, is that, my honey every season changed a little bit, flavor, color. And as I met other beekeepers and started traveling and collecting honey, I started to realize, wow, there's a whole world out there. There's all these different flowers. And when bees visit different flowers, they're gathering the nectar. And this is what imparts the flavor. It's really the botanical source. The bee adds some enzymes into it, but also the environment, the soil. It's going back to the whole thing like wine, like terroir. It's the environment, conditions that bring on these different flavors. And that was just so fascinating to me. And I started my next journey, which was the honey journey. So I had collected at one point probably 75 jars of honey from travels and
so
friends. Cool. And people were giving me honey, and I became obsessed, right?
I have this image of just like of all the honey collectors and the beekeepers going around with this amazing case with these vials of just this liquid gold in all these colors. Because you said you're exchanging. That's amazing.
So yeah, we're trading honey. And so I had this shelf in my house, right? And honey from all over the world, beautiful labels, colors. And every day I would walk by this beautiful shelf, and I'm like, would taste it here and there. I had no words how to describe it. I had no tools in my brain to appreciate it. And I'm like, something's wrong with this picture. So that's when I fell into the next rabbit hole. And I started asking beekeepers that were much more experienced to me. So, I'm a beekeeper, and if my bees are visiting clover, what should my honey taste like? And if my bees are visiting linden trees, what should my honey taste like? And it was dismissed. Nobody had any clue and any knowledge or even the worst part is they didn't care. And I came back from a foodie background and I'm thinking, I've got all these honeys here. What do I do with it? So I figured that I would go and learn wine tasting and then transfer it to honey. So I took a job.
Oh, that's incredible.
That is so cool.
I took a job because I wanted to learn how to taste. So I took a job with an Italian honey importer, wine importer. And I spent like 6 weeks with their sommeliers getting trained. And they wanted me to be a salesperson. So I spent 6 weeks learning vocabulary, how to taste, how to smell, and this whole thing. And I was really thrilled with this. But then they wanted me to go sell, and I'm not a salesperson. So I had to like walk away from that. But I wanted the training. And I was still on the hunt because I figured there had to be a database somewhere that says when my bees visit clover, that my honey's going to be grassy like hay, and I'm going to get this cinnamon note. And when my bees visit eucalyptus, it's going to have this animal kind of funkiness and brothy. And I ended up in Italy going to taste wine in Montalcino. So we're driving around, like stopping at these wineries, and we roll into this town. And there's a honey festival going on.
Oh, how fortuitous.
Right?
Wow.
And there's a sign that says La Città del Miele, which means the honey city, the city of honey. I'm like, no.
This is my place.
Right? So I walk in and it's a big honey festival. And there's and there's beekeepers selling all their honeys on the table. And I walk around and every honey had the name of the botanical source. And I'm thinking, how do they know that? So I'm walking around more, and there's people doing a honey tasting in the corner, and they had honey lined up in wine glasses like a rainbow. And I had never seen that before. I'd never seen so many honeys lined up by the color. My eyes popped out of my head, and I said, what are you doing? We're doing a honey tasting. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like out of this world, right? So I stuck around, and basically what they did is they took each honey container, the wine glass, and they passed it around, and they were telling us the botanical source, like this is chestnut honey. It should be dark amber in color, and you should smell aromatics, and it's woody, and you should have this Marchese soap smell, and you should
everything you wanted.
Everything I wanted.
Wow.
And they went through 18 honeys, and I thought, oh my gosh, how do you know this? So I started talking to them, and they said, we have honey school here. It's in Bologna.
Of course, it's Italy.
Of course, everything good is in Italy, by the way.
Of course.
Right?
Italia.
Yes.
Bella Italia.
No accents, Trevor.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
one or two. It's a lot of Italy today. We may have to get a couple of accents in.
Well, Italy is the leading country in honey discovery, honey literacy, honey
I had no idea.
tasting. Well, they do wine, they do olive oil, and
Why not?
Makes sense.
doing honey. So I come back and I'm posting all these pictures of the honey festival and the honey. And somebody reaches out to me in Italy on social media and is like, come to honey school. I'm like, really? When is it? So P.S., 6 months later, I'm on a plane.
That's
Again.
excellent.
Actually, the first class was in Sardinia, and I show up, and there's the guy that was emailing me.
Oh,
he was the
wow.
teacher. And I went for 4 days of honey school, and it was literally everything that I wanted to know. It was tasting, writing tasting notes, learning the botanical sources, what part of the region it was produced, what season, what the color should be, what the flavor should be. And at the end of the course, you have to be able to identify 18 different honeys
The big test.
by smell and taste alone,
yeah.
Whoa.
like a sommelier,
Yeah, like
right?
Psalm.
Right.
Right?
I know. I'm thinking Essence of Garden Hose because from Psalm. Have you
Right?
ever seen that movie? That's incredible. But how validating, because you're like, I knew you
was
had
all
this
here.
innate sense that this was going, this should exist.
I was
and there it was.
I'm crazy. Yeah, I'm crazy. These are
So
the
aren't we
crazy
all,
things. Yeah, these are the
by the
crazy
way.
things I do, right?
Crazy good.
So I ended up just continuing the program. Actually, they were like, I was the first, like I was the only American there. It was all Italians. It was all in Italian. And they kept saying, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I want to learn about honey. And they're like, don't you have honey school back in the US? I'm like, no,
Not
don't.
yet.
Not
Give me
yet.
a minute.
Not yet.
So P.S. I ended up going back and I completed the program and I passed the exam and I became a member. And then I worked 10 years teaching to become like an official teacher. Wow. So now I get to travel and teach honey.
That's amazing.
And taste honey for a living.
So best job ever. And
wow.
So now, listeners, something special is going to happen today on this episode of Yard to Table. Now, what you can't see, but I can see, and
I can see it.
Ellen can see it, and Marina can see it, is that she has brought us an amazing flight of local honeys for us to try. And we're going to get a little bit of
some palate education.
Very excited.
Very excited.
Honey.
So
lead us.
Tell us. This is the first one.
This is your first honey tasting.
This is my first honey tasting. I've never done this
other
before.
than the one we did on our own, which I'm sure we did incorrectly. Now, based on all of this.
So the first honey we're going to start with is a very light. This is a linden honey from a basswood tree. They grow all over the East Coast. She's taking notes already.
I love it. This is good.
So the first thing we do is we look at the color, same as wine. You know, this is the same process. We look at it. The second thing we do is before we taste, we smell.
So just like wine, you do a little sniff.
But what you'll do is you'll smear the honey around the container the same way that a wine swirl.
Gotcha.
And the reason that we do that is because we're moving the molecules around and we actually experience flavor in our nose. Your tongue can only experience sweet, sour, salt, and bitter, but our nose is where we get all the flavor.
And this first honey is what again?
That's a linden honey. It's a summer honey. It's a tree, the basswood tree.
It's a very golden, clear, crystally honey.
It has a lot of transparency to it, and there's a lot of bubbles, and it's very easy to move around, and it flows as you would expect. What we would all do a traditional honey, and I've just spilled it all over the side of the glass.
Have to taste
and I will have to taste it because it's
Now
about to get sticky up on your table.
This is where it's good to be a husband and wife team. We can share the tools.
Well, we have
plenty of little spoons there. Wow.
Well, I just don't want to wait for it. That was really my thing. No.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm taking the linden.
So it's like a delicate honey.
Very, very light.
Very light. It's fruity. It's got a little bit of a vegetal note we call like a plant-based. It also has notes of like a minty finish you might find in there.
And is it important where you taste it on your tongue with honey, or you just put it in?
Yeah, I would put it on my tongue and then I let it melt and move all around. And then you add some saliva because it helps with the tasting. And then inhale, it goes up through your nose to your olfactory bulb.
Oh, wow.
Also, there's a little sparkliness that I'm getting on the palate. It's almost a little zzz. I don't know what that word is, but there's a little...
That's the minty ending.
Yeah, there's a little...
But I like that zzz on the tongue.
Little electric. It's a little electric finish.
That's what that is.
That's delicious. It's very light, but I can taste the mint. I can taste the
I very much so
grass.
can taste that.
All
right, so that's our first one. Are we going by color? Are we just skipping around?
Yeah, we're going to go lightest to dark.
All right.
And the second honey I brought for you is, you're going to know it's crystallized. And I know we talked about the teddy bear being crystallized. But
is that a bad thing for honey to be crystallized?
Crystallization is actually a sign of quality, but it's the quality of the crystals that matter. So this, you can see it's crystallized throughout, almost like peanut butter. But when you see those teddy bears, they separate. There's always like liquid with crystals.
Like a little crust almost, right?
Yeah. That, liquid mixed with crystals is usually a sign that it's been highly heated.
Okay.
Definitely heat treated, but it should be even throughout. And this is a sign of quality. This means really, good quality honey.
And you can see it for our listeners. You can't see it, but it is a consistent, crystallization. It's coating that inside of the glass, and it's just a lovely little creamy, whitish, ivoryish color.
Yeah, it's like an ivory, little tan, very calming, very soothing. And when I'm smelling this, I'm getting a little bit of vanilla. I'm getting a little bit of almost like a sandalwood or like an oaky, woody kind of.
Like a hay, dry grass, hay.
Yeah, a little bit of a.
Swirl it around. Honey.
I've been swirling this. I'm about to swirl myself.
And the name of this one again, Marina.
So this is a clover honey.
Clover.
This is not the clover you get in the grocery store. This is like the sweet clovers.
Wow. Holy smokes. That is a very amazing flavor.
This one is produced in the Dakotas and the prairies, where there is lots of prairies, land dedicated to growing all kinds of clover for livestock. But the bees pollinate this. And this is nothing like the clover in the store, right?
Oh my gosh.
Not even close.
And it has such complexity of flavor.
Wow.
It's like dried grass, hay.
Definitely got that hay. 100%.
Almost like sweet tobacco.
Yes, that's what it is. It's like walking into a tobacco store and you're smelling pipe tobacco. And it's that sweet vegetable,
vegetal grassy.
That's what it was. That's what I was looking for. You should think about becoming like a honey sommelier, Marina, just because you kind of know what I'm thinking.
I'm reading your mind.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow.
That or a psychic, one or the other. I will say,
that was delicious.
I am very sorry that everyone listening to this podcast cannot be here in the studio with us, because this is a very special good time that we're having. And that almost doesn't taste like honey.
No.
Right?
It's so complex that it is, because there are some of those common notes that you associate with honey, but it is so far away from
just the way it tastes on your tongue.
Wow.
The consistency. Oh
boy. My goodness.
Oh boy. We got another one coming.
Can't wait.
So this is a little bit darker. You'll notice it's like more in the like
a caramel color.
Chocolate caramel.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is really special. I don't have a lot of this honey.
Oh, I'm excited.
But this is, we believe it to be chestnut, which we had chestnuts here in the U.S., but the blight took them out.
Yeah, it was very, very prolific in the U.S. Yeah.
We don't have chestnuts, but
Italy does.
They
have a lot of the chestnuts.
But this is a U.S. produced.
Really?
One of my friends in Pittsburgh, she gave me a sample, and we were trained on chestnut honey in Italy. This is American chestnut honey. So you'll notice that.
Wow. It has such a great nose.
It's savory. It's bitter.
So when we're talking about how we know where the bees are going, are the hives in literally a grove of chestnuts? Is that where they're going? Or do we know? Because bees travel far, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
So bees will travel 4 miles from their hive. But we also have to consider that different flowers are blooming at different cycles and different seasons. So right now, when the chestnuts are blooming, primarily the bees will go to that plant. But when there's other things, mixed in, you won't get a honey that is truly chestnut. But this one really resembles what we were trained on.
It's so interesting because when you said
Holy
savory, I thought
like umami.
Yes, and I thought no, honey can't be savory. Now I have to just the smell alone. I'm getting that note.
It has smoky notes. We talk a lot on the podcast about aha moments that we have when
goodness.
It's banana. By the way, this chestnut honey is unreal.
Fabulous.
It's dark and
woody.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Smoky.
It's perfect for
spicy.
The day that we have today.
Oh yeah. It's a little bit rainy out, which is
a little chilly.
Very welcome. But these aha moments that we have where we try something for the first time, like snapping off our fresh asparagus, or right from the garden, what raw asparagus that you've just grown tastes like, and how different that is from what you buy in the store, or ground cherries or whatever. This chestnut honey is absolutely shocking in the best possible way.
I'm just taking it in.
Right.
Honestly, it's so unusual and so delicious. And I don't have the words because I'm not trained, but I think it's delicious.
Right. It's like nothing you buy in the store.
I've never tasted
I've
anything
never had
like
anything
that.
even remotely close to that.
That's crazy. So the last one is Weston honey.
Ooh.
This is my honey.
Ah, I love it.
We love red bee honey.
And you can see that
We eat a lot of red bee honey, by the way.
it's super cloudy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do very minimal straining on this one. So there's like pieces of wax in it. There's a lot of foam
That's how
and
I like it.
bubbles and everything. That's medicine. Like that's going to cure today, the rainy, cold, bitter.
Mm.
While Trevor is sniffing
I'm not
and
giving
tasting,
I'm
tell
not
us a
giving
little
anybody.
bit.
I'm not giving anybody any of this.
He's getting into it. Tell us what his history.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'm like having a moment over here. I know everybody's trying to talk about honey as medicine.
You keep handing these to me without the spoon because I know you're
on
so
purpose. By the way, that's on
excited
purpose. That's
about it.
100%
I
on
know.
purpose.
I know you. No.
He's a honey hog.
Well documented. Marina, I have to pause this on. We're going to get back to honey as medicine because it's a fascinating,
Yes.
literally millennia people have been using.
Let's give red bee its moment.
I have to because I've been buying red bee honey very consistently since we've moved to Weston. I have bought our local grocery store, Lily's, out of red bee honey.
You're the one.
I'm the
Okay.
one, 'cause I keep buying it.
They call me and say, somebody just came in here and bought a dozen honeys.
That would be me. Because we give them away to people and we eat them
goodness.
ourselves. Where this is your honey.
This tastes fruity.
I've never tasted anything like this from, this is unbelievable.
This is what Weston tastes like. And
Tastes good.
yeah, it tastes good. It's, we have a
It's
lot
almost
of,
candy. It's like there's all of these different.
It's very fruity, very sweet, but not sweet in a cloying way. It's just got a sharpness with the sweet.
it's got the
that's
fruitiness.
very fruity.
like cotton candy or something. I can't even use the right words.
Like brown sugar a little bit. It's a little bit of
I'm
everything.
passing it back to Trevor.
I got another hit. This is like I'm going to do shots here in a minute. Wow.
Delicious.
All right. So while I'm scarfing all of this, please.
Please do.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about the medicine of it all, the health benefits of honey and what people have been looking for through time. Tell us a little bit about honey through the ages.
So, honey originally was used as medicine. And as far back as the Egyptians, they used honey to embalm the mummies and with propolis and beeswax. And it's been well documented that honey's been used topically for wounds and burns.
And still is.
Yeah. And internal digestion, ulcers. So it's been used over years, centuries as a medicine. And I think most people can agree that, having a teaspoon of honey when you have a sore throat is like a cashmere blanket hugging you, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really cure anything, but it definitely relieves symptoms of allergies and sore throats and sinuses. Sometimes people taste honey with me and their nose starts running. And it's because that activity in the honey, which I'll talk about, the chemical composition of the honey kind of drains the sinuses and it helps with allergies with people.
I've heard that. I've heard about ensuring that it's local, because when we moved to Connecticut, that was one of the things that we looked at. It was we get our local honey to help with allergies. And that's true, right? It can help you.
Because you're taking in the bees have processed all of the pollen and the other things that are in the environment, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And, I don't know what the number is for local, but you really do want to have fresh honey, the freshest that you can get. And local should be fresh because it's made right there. It has no, travel, doesn't have to travel to you. But there are some chemical composition properties of honey that are very, very unique that no other food has. And this gives it these amazing benefits. So one of the things is that honey is very acidic and it has a very, very low pH. And for this reason, a lot of bacteria and pathogens can't survive in the honey environment.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So very acidic.
It's antiseptic.
It's antiseptic. And then also the bees add certain enzymes to it called glucose oxidase, which changes the glucose in the honey to hydrogen peroxide
Oh, wow.
for a very short period of time, just a little bit. But this is another benefit of the antibacterial properties is this hydrogen peroxide activity because of the bees adding their enzymes. And it also has another property where it absorbs moisture because it's hygroscopic. It's like 80% sugar and 20% water. So it's always trying to grab moisture. If you leave a jar of honey open over a couple of weeks, it'll absorb all kinds of moisture and smells. It's like a sponge. And when you put honey on a wound and there is bacteria there, it will suffocate it by stealing the moisture that it needs to survive.
Interesting.
So this hygroscopic quality of the honey, again, another reason that it makes it antibacterial. So there is scientific evidence that honey has these antibacterial properties.
That's amazing. And it tastes ridiculous.
Right?
Because you don't want to really taste hydrogen peroxide on its own because it does not taste as good as this honey.
No.
Do not do it.
But you don't taste it.
No, you're not going to have that. Uh-oh.
But can we taste-
She just opened something else.
What is this piece of
So
magic?
this is a honey that when I first tasted it in honey school, that my head exploded because I didn't recognize it as honey.
Marina,
and
I don't have a lot of head to explode left. I've already had my head exploded like 4 times.
But I want you to taste this because
I'm going to give it to
this
Ellen
is-
first so she doesn't accuse me of hogging.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a honey that is produced on the island of Sardinia, which, you know, is a blue zone, right?
Yeah, where everything good happens on Sardinia.
And this is their honey, their traditional honey that they have produced for hundreds of years from a tree called the strawberry tree.
Whoa.
And it is nothing what you would think of honey. Like it tastes nothing like what you would recognize.
If you told me that I was eating honey, what is that flavor?
It's
that I'm
so
tasting?
bitter.
It's
so
a bitterness,
bitter.
but not it's not untasty. That's the word I'm coming up with.
Untasty,
Right?
yeah, that's a good one.
This is the bitterest honey produced on the planet.
Wow.
And it tastes like, I don't know if you like it or not, but it tastes like licking an ashtray.
There is a little bit of that. So
You taste the ashes.
What does this pair with?
So one of their traditional foods that they produce is called ciedas. And it's actually a huge ravioli that they fry on the top of the stove. And when they take it off hot, crispy, they put the honey on it.
Wow.
It is a treasure.
It is a very sour flavor. I get sort of soury
The
notes
bitterness I
out of
get
it.
for sure. And
It's so bitter.
and if you don't think that eating an ashtray sounds delicious, but I will tell
It's
you it
smoky.
is. It's smoky.
Again, let's not actually eat an ashtray the same way you're not actually going to drink hydrogen peroxide, but this is very unique.
Yeah, it's a curiosity and it's a little spicy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you get like a little crispy green fresh pepper.
Yes,
like
totally
if you
pepper.
sliced a pepper, right?
Yes.
Crazy.
I get that
It's
in the
almost
back
a
'cause that's-
metallic. There's
Yeah.
a little bit of a metallic tinge to it.
Wow.
We're thinking.
So I just wanted you to experience bitter honey.
That's phenomenal.
This is such an education. We're kind of going through this conversation. We're kind of going through your books. You know, your first book was Lessons from an Accidental Beekeeper, right? And that was sort of that whole journey about honey changed your life. And then you wrote The Honey Connoisseur, which is about the tasting and developing this incredible palate. And then part of that journey was you took all the learning that you had in Italy and then you created an American Society of Tasting. Is that right? And now we're at the World Atlas of Honey. So
Yeah, it just
Yeah, how did the world? I mean, we've just been around the world here at the studio.
Yeah.
But how did that book come together? What was the idea to bring that book to the world?
the World Atlas
The
of Honey.
World Atlas, yeah.
Actually, I was asked to write it.
Isn't that amazing?
That's
Yeah.
always nice when people say, "You're amazing. Would you like to do this amazing project?"
You're a
and you
subject
say,
matter
"Why
expert."
not?"
Exactly. And I was flattered. So they basically, outlined what they wanted. 80 countries. Part 1 would be history, culinary, medicine, a little bit of everything. And then part 2 would be let's go around the world and talk about the most important honeys, the botanical sources, the bees who make it, the beekeepers, rituals, traditions, cultural aspects of honey. It was a tremendous amount of research, a tremendous amount of information that had to be gathered. And they presented it to me as, well, every topic is only 280 words. And I thought, I could do that. 280 words about Iran, South Africa, Australia. I could do that. Wow. It was a lot more than 280 words.
Trevor, can you relate to have struggles with word count?
Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
In your writing journeys,
blank pages are hard. As an author myself, blank pages are hard. And you think, oh, it's going to be fine and easy. And then you write something.
I can do that.
Yeah.
And then your publisher's like, but you know what would be better if you did it totally differently. And then you say, sure, let's try it.
Yeah. And then they change everything. But it was about a year and a half of research and writing.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for my network of international honey friends and experts and tasters that were very helpful and instrumental in getting me samples of the different honeys and telling me about the regions and the botanical sources. So
one of my favorite things in the book was seeing the different ways that bees are kept around the world, because we, for the most part, know the regular wooden boxes and they're stacked. I mean, that's what most people see and experience. But in places like Africa and in Micronesia and all these other places, it's totally different. They're made of reeds and straw and like all of these other things. It's absolutely fascinating to see how so many different cultures do the same process and keep bees
in a different way. Yeah. So the different kinds of hives depends on a few things. It could be the region, if it's a tropical region. It could be how they traditionally, were catching wild bees. So there's a lot of different variables in how people kept bees, clay pots. But mainly it's because a lot of the countries are very poor. They don't have the access to the traditional Langstroth beehive that everybody sees. But nonetheless, they keep bees, they harvest honey, and, they're doing good for the environment.
Well, and the book is beautiful. So, I mean, not only is it full of all the incredible research that you have, and from the beginning, just to even about what beekeeping is, again, you do that in a lovely way. And then starting to see just how bees and honey are handled around the world. The pictures are gorgeous. You talk about like so much of the world. I think this was in this book or one of your other books about so much of our world's food in general is dependent on the honeybees. I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was a big percentage of world food that was dependent on the honeybees. And here at Stonebrook, we are organic. We care about our pollinators in every way possible. We don't use chemicals. How, in your opinion, and obviously now with this worldview that you have, how do we support the bees wherever we live and create an environment for them to thrive?
That's a great question, because a lot of people want to help the bees, but necessarily they don't want to become a beekeeper, and you don't have to. Just planting, planting pollinator friendly flowers, whether it's a tree, herbs, plants, any kind of flower that you can plant that's going to provide nectar and pollen throughout the season. So spring, summer, fall, they need to eat all throughout the season. And there are specific flowers that are pollinator friendly, and a lot of the nurseries and garden centers have their little pollinator section, and they're very knowledgeable now because everybody's on board with this. And the most important thing is this no mow May and not mowing and getting away from this mentality of having to have a perfectly green lawn and realizing that dandelions and clovers are beautiful and are very important sources of nectar and pollen for bees and other pollinators. So, try to fall in love with wildflowers and change the conversation from weed to flower, because weeds tend to be negative. But if you really look at dandelions, they're so beautiful. Those beautiful golden heads that pop up in the spring. And so important for them in the early part of the season. They need that to feed their young so that the colony can grow and become robust and to pollinate for wildlife. You know, they're pollinating plants so that there's nuts and seeds and berries for birds and deer. So they are not only providing food for us, but for the wildlife that sustains them.
It's so important that you mention that, because I think one of the things that we don't use chemicals on the lawn. We notice the difference in our time going into 4 years that we've been here this May. It's that we have fireflies again. We first moved here, we didn't have fireflies. And I thought, oh, we'll see fireflies at night. And they come back because we're not spraying. We allow clover to come up in the 100%.
Lawn. We love clover in our lawn.
We love it. It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
And it's some of the first things that come up that the bees get a chance to draw from. And again, that's an education process that we went under, but it's just also beautiful, to your point. It's just so pretty to see the little white flowers and the yellow dandelions and manage that in a lawn that's a little wild is okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, we're going to survive, you know, without, the mow and blow guys, right?
That's right.
But, you can walk through your clover in your yard and just watch the pollinators bobbing around. It's so peaceful
beautiful.
And grounding. I think, that's partly what beekeeping did, is that it connected me to nature and grounded me. And, when you're an author and you're busy and you're doing all kinds of things, you just want to connect to the ground and the earth. And, bees do that.
It really has impacted your relationship with nature.
Exactly. Yeah. In a way that I could never imagine.
Yeah. I love that.
Little different than SVA.
Well, I did spend time there and I'm grateful for that experience because I think it made me who I am today. You know, it added to the whole package.
100%.
So we have honeycomb here.
Oh, honeycomb.
See, I was seeing that in the middle of this amazing little parade of goodness.
And again, you can't see, listeners, I'm so sorry, but Marina has made a beautiful plate on a gorgeous piece of wood with some honeycomb. I see cheese. What else is there?
There's some walnuts. And, the best part about honey is, besides tasting it, is eating it with cheeses. And
we wanted to talk about that, the foods, complementary foods with honey.
Well, honey goes with every food group. Okay. So
Naturally.
You can have meat, fish, you can have vegetables, salad dressings, but my favorite is cheese. And I'm going to invite you to take a cracker and spread a little goat cheese on it.
Yes, please.
And take a chunk of the honeycomb.
I'm going to make you one, Elle.
Thank you.
And I brought some walnuts to add a little crunchy texture to it.
I'm sold on all of it.
And this is lunch.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. It's interesting you talk about salad dressings. Again, your education comes with just, I think, living here. I never made a salad dressing with honey. And this, now that's one of our go-tos. It's a little lemon, olive oil, honey, some herbs, delicious, fresh. I don't think we've bought a jar of salad dressing.
No,
we stopped
never.
entirely.
You don't need to.
No, I buy nothing.
Should I wait for you to try or should I go for it?
Oh, you're
Please.
too polite. I'm going to join you.
Please do.
This could be breakfast every day.
Oh my goodness.
So I love honeycomb with soft cheeses. Ricotta is my
I'm chewing
favorite.
into the mic. This is some ASMR.
Okay, what is ASMR?
Have you seen those videos where people just make a continuous sound?
Sensory experience.
Which this is definitely a sensory experience. Oh my goodness.
Sometimes, but right now it never gets old.
Oh my gosh, with the goat cheese.
Wow.
So Marina, you're coming back next week, right? We're going to do some more tastings?
Next week. How about tomorrow?
I'll be back tomorrow with 5 more honeys that we can taste from different places.
Oh my goodness. I know. I want to get through that cabinet of 75.
Wow.
It must be more than that now.
Well, after my training, I learned about honey. I learned, what good honey was, what bad honey was. I was able to taste them. So I took my training, went to my cabinet, started tasting the honeys. Hey, I'm an expert now, right? Started to realize this one is old, this one's crystallized, it has like an incomplete structure, the color's wrong on this. And I learned basically that honey does not get better with age, and that the honeys that were in plastic started to leach in.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't keep them, and most of them ended up getting tossed because
Wow.
I had them for 3 to 5 years. And at that point, for me, it's a little bit old. Honey is best eaten fresh, right out of the hive during the same year or the second year harvest. I was collecting for a while. So I really had to toss them because my palate had already sort of become sophisticated and I was not enjoying any of them. They were old.
Interesting. Because I've heard that because it is anaerobic, that it can last forever.
It could last forever and it may be edible, but it doesn't taste good. And that's the problem. So yeah, they found honey in the tombs and
But we're not trying that.
Yeah, I'm still that's on my bucket list to try to find somebody to get me some of that King Tut honey.
The King Tut business.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm in on that one. That's amazing.
I would try it. I 100% would try it.
But it's edible. You can still eat it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't taste good and it
Right.
has no more health benefits. That 3,000-year-old honey.
That feels like it's an old thing to
Yeah.
eat, but that's, why not? Give it a shot. I like it.
Now, we tried this amazing honey from Italy. Are there any other varietals from around the world that you love?
Yeah. What's your favorite? I know it's like choosing.
Italian's
yeah.
probably top.
Favorite
Is
kid,
Italian top or
but-
Yeah, I do like Italian honey. And the reason that their honey is good is the reason that all their food is good. And it's because they take care of their environment. They don't use a lot of pesticides. They use traditional methods. And their food is very controlled there. They're very about good food. Don't mess with our food. So their honey is just as good. But I've tasted some really interesting honeys. I actually brought one from New Zealand.
Ooh.
cool.
I'm sorry, from Tasmania. This is leatherwood honey from Tasmania.
Oh, wow.
And a new friend that
Trevor's
I met,
eyes right now.
a new friend gave me this. And it is one of the most complex honeys that you'll ever taste.
Leatherwood, is that what we said?
Leatherwood. It tastes like a rainforest where it comes from.
Wow. What notes are you getting there? Oh, that face he just made. It's
It's
perplexing.
everything.
Oh my gosh. He's taking it out. Mm. Mm.
It's musty. It's like
That
dried
musty.
leaves. It's aromatic. It's floral, like magnolias.
Yes. What is that smell that I'm smelling?
Rainforest, the tropical rainforest.
It is. It's almost
dried.
like that moldy layer of leaves. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dampness.
Now that may not sound appetizing to
But
you.
it is.
But
But
it's
it is.
delicious.
Right?
Ashtrays, moldy leaves.
But hang on. There's also like a liquory kind
Licorice,
of
yeah.
flavor. Licorice.
Oh,
Yeah.
anise.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Thank
You should go to honey school.
I'm there, by the way. Whenever it's the next semester, sign me up.
Wow.
May at my place.
Oh, you got it. We're there.
We're there. It's a short drive.
Yeah. That is very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. That's one
Wow.
of my favorites. And somebody gave me some
gosh.
honeydew from Transylvania. That is so interesting. It's
Wow.
like sour. And if you don't know what honeydew is when bees gather the secretions of different aphids that live on trees
Oh,
and
wow.
different plants. So there are aphids that live on these evergreen coniferous trees. And they will suck up all the like resins and the, sweet sucrose.
Saps and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they'll leave back the secretions, droppings, and then the bees will go pick this up and they make honeydew from it. They make honey from it. It's called honeydew because it involves the aphids or the leaf hoppers and the bees. And it's usually really dark. And sometimes it's got a resiny note, but this particular one is really sour.
Wow.
Sour honey. People think honey is sweet, but it has a very interesting apple pie kind of savory sour note that I just love.
I think I'm 100% blown away by that because I know that a lot of times ants will do certain things with aphids and that sort of colony structure, and they'll keep aphids and milk aphids for different kinds of secretions and things like that. There's honey ants and other kinds of
Nature
ants
is
that
wild.
do that. I had no idea that bees also used in certain societies other species. I thought they were exclusively just pollinators.
No, they,
Wow.
they work with other insects. And on a whole nother note, you're aware of the spotted lanternfly, this invasive
Yes.
kind of insect. Looks like a moth, but
Yep.
Full colors.
right. So these are also like living on the tree of heaven, Ailanthus tree, and they're leaving their secretions. And the bees are gathering the spotted lantern secretions and making spotted lanternfly honey.
No.
And beekeepers now in Pennsylvania and certain parts of New Jersey are flipping out because their honey is now dark and they don't recognize it.
Wow.
And then now it's being tested and studied at the University of Pittsburgh as honeydew from spotted lanternfly.
Whoa.
Now, is that not a good thing, or we don't know yet?
We don't know yet, but it is what it is.
Right.
And the spotted lanternflies are here.
Yeah, they are.
They're not going away.
Like it or not, they are here, which
and
nobody likes it.
eventually they will adapt, and there will be predators that will, start the food chain and start eating them. But we now have spotted lanternfly honeydew. And there's some beekeepers selling it as doomsday honey. Right?
Okay, I gotta love that.
I did say that on a previous episode. Why are we call it the lanternfly or the tree of heaven? It's so pretty. There's so nice names.
right.
These should be doomsday honey.
Yeah.
I'm there.
It was so common for us to bring things from other places. We talk a lot about natives and invasive plants. Our actions have consequences, good and bad.
Exactly. And tree of heaven is invasive.
Right.
Right.
And I will just say that the honey from tree of heaven is delicious. And bees are not native.
Shocker alert.
So they do like non-native plants.
Right.
Wow.
So, and I know a lot of people, let's pull out the knotweed, let's pull out, great. But you must replace it with something that blooms at the same time, because the knotweed, again, we have knotweed honey. And if you pull it out, the bees are going to look for sources of nectar at the end of the summer. So you must replant something because they're going to be hungry.
Wow.
So yeah, our actions have consequences, and
we have to think through the next step. It's not just one step.
Right.
We have to think about what comes next after that. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So, beekeeping really has opened my eyes to, the environment, what's going on, the balance, the weather, what's blooming when. And, as a beekeeper, you have to be sort of a meteorologist. You have to be, a veterinarian. You have to know behavior, a biologist. You're a doctor if you're using honey as medicine. You have to know so many different skills, and it takes years to kind of get them all working together. But beekeepers are really interesting people. And that's what I loved about joining the bee club, is that everybody was a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, well, it's been a wealth of knowledge today.
Yeah, I
oh
think
my
you're
gosh.
a very interesting person. It's all working. I tell you that. It's all working. And we've taken up I don't want it to end.
I know.
I do
There's
not
so
want it to
many.
end, but
Thank you.
Marina, I can't thank you enough. This has been such an education and a joyful experience. And I know that my mind has been blown many times
100%.
in a good way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
We
you for
really
coming.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you for
Thank
coming
you.
on
Yeah.
Yard to Table.
Thank you for indulging in honey with me.
oh, please. This is the best day ever.
Trevor's ready to keep indulging.
That one was I'm buzzing right now. Me personally, I am buzzed.
It was an educational and Epicurean experience. Like all that alliteration.
It was a radical. I
don't think I'm going to forget those flavors. You did really well, by the way. You definitely.
with the
Yes.
diagnosis of the varying
I
where
think you
it
need
was
to take
from.
her course.
I would love to take her course.
I
You would
know.
love to take her course.
I would. Let's go to Dubai. I think that's when the next big one's happening.
Yeah, that's a little further than I thought we were going to go, but I'm good. I'm 100% good with going
You
to
mean
Dubai.
rather than just going in Weston?
Yes,
Okay.
100%. She's a neighbor. She'll live up the road.
That is true. Well, we know you're all going to want to follow Marina to learn more about the amazing world of being a honey sommelier. So you can go to her website, which is honeysommelier.com. And of course, follow her on Instagram at honeysommelier. And we'll have all of that information in the show notes, of course.
And if you're lucky enough to live in Fairfield County, Connecticut, you can find Red Bee honey at local cheese shops, local stores. Just ask for it. I'm sure that they will be more than happy to get it.
And she also ships.
Oh, that's right. She ships. So you can go to redbee.com and you can pick up honey and you can pick up books there too.
Absolutely. And you can also follow Red Bee on Instagram.
Oh, yeah. It's just Red Bee on Instagram.
That's right. Well, it's been a very sweet experience for us.
I see what you did there.
Thanks for being with us and having a seat at our table.
Yard to Table is a production of Macrocosm Entertainment. Don't forget to rate us and subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. And for tips and more information, follow us on Instagram at Stonebrook House.